Hey everybody, this is Julie Cole with Cole Wellness. Cole Wellness is a therapeutic wellness center that I co-own with my husband JP in Valentine, South Carolina. And this is our podcast, the Cole Wellness Podcast. Recently we talked about self-care, and as we were going through that, I really gave thought to self-care versus soul care. So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about I'm going to have some guests on to talk about soul care versus self-care. So take a listen, and we hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is Julie Cole with Cole Wellness, and this is the Cole Wellness Podcast. Today, we're continuing our series on soul care, and I have my friend and colleague, Mike Malone, here with me today. Mike, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. As she said, my name's Mike, and I am currently the Senior Program Director at Favor Greenville. I've been with Favor since the center opened in 2013. I'm also a person in long-term recovery, which for me means that I'm committed to a process of recovery one day at a time, whether I've got 10 years or one day. And I guess most importantly, for this sort of contexted podcast, I've just been in kind of the service arena, both personally and professionally, for the better part of the last decade.
Right.
I feel like that's the most relevant information.
Yeah. Well, and you and I, so we met in 2014 when you went through the peer support training, and I was sitting through it I kind of went through it too, but it was in the context of my job and taking over responsibility for that. And we just worked, off and on closely. We've actually traveled and done a couple of training of trainers together, and, and we currently do some ethics trainings and stuff together. So, and, lots of really deep conversations about life and spirituality and lots of debates. So it's been good. And I'm glad you came on today. I appreciate you saying yes.
One of the cool things I like about this and our relationship is that I feel like we both come from the same place where we deeply care. We're really serious about certain things. Mm-hmm. And our intentions are pure, but we also differ in a way that's useful and help of us grow, and it's probably cool for other people to see too. Yeah. Well, and one thing I always have appreciated is your willingness to just come and be vulnerable and authentic. And so I laugh, but I mean, we've tried to warn people when we do trainings together, because we're always evolving. And so we might not do a training together for a year, and then we come to the table as completely different people. Like we really do, and so the irony of it is even our content isn't the same, and the way we kind of play off of each other isn't the same. And so everybody who goes through training with us kind of gets a different, more evolved version of us in that training. So our debates also continue, which is a funny thing. I always love that. I think it's great. That I always laugh when we have to warn people, like, we're not fighting. We're just kind of working out content, and, like differentiating, because we don't think about things the same way, which is really cool, and we have divergent experiences with the same content. But we do want the same thing, which is what's best absolutely. And everybody else. No doubt. Well, I think that we come together for me, I have a ton of respect for you and your experiences, and I think that you do for me as well. And so I think that the thing about it is our debates aren't about who's right. It's just about trying to continue to grow and learn from each other. I mean, every time we do trainings together, I learn more about you. It deepens my ideas about the topic. It gets me out of my mindset and kind of like challenges me to grow. And so that's why, I really enjoy doing trainings with you, because it's always an evolution and a growth process for me. So thank you for your willingness to show up, real quick. Do you mind telling everybody, because everybody on here may not know what Favor Greenville is. Do you mind just giving everybody the, 1 minute? Yeah, the Favor Greenville elevator speech. So Favor technically is a recovery community organization. That's kind of one of the new emerging entities in the recovery universe, right? We're an RCO registered with ARCO. We're CAPRA certified. And basically our mission is just to deliver recovery support services to families and individuals that struggle with addiction. Yep. Our most common forms of that are support groups, one-on-one recovery coaching, our helpline, the hospital programs, that sort of thing.
Right. And you have been a leader like nationwide in developing programming. I mean, just you've not been willing to stay within the box with anything. And you've just kind of like taken the lead and basically, sorry, somebody's coming through on I can't see it. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
That's my Google Voice number.
First.
Okay, that was so weird. I can't turn it off because it's my Google Voice line. So that's the first time that's ever happened. But anyway, so I just, definitely model program. You guys are considered a model program nationally. And so you've done some really good work, and we've been able to partner to kind of, on some of the projects. And that's been really cool too. So okay, so I know that with that growth, y'all have had it at Favor Greenville, and y'all went from 6 or 7 years ago to y'all kind of sitting around in a room trying to figure out how to get people in the doors to, you've touched how many thousands of people?
Tens of thousands at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, y'all done recovery coaching one-on-one with probably 20, 30,000 more.
Maybe, I don't know. I'd say we've definitely triaged, at least 10 to 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And not just individuals, but a lot of family members.
Absolutely. And the model family programming and stuff too. So yeah, that's really cool. And so I know the way y'all have exploded, I know part of your journey has been, how do you take care of yourself in this so you don't get sideways, you don't burn out, you don't, get resentful. I mean, all of the things that can happen, when you're literally hitched to a train that's just taken off and you're along for the ride. So I asked you to think about what soul care meant for you, and you kind of sent me some thoughts. So you just want to kind of start there?
Certainly. So one of the things, we have grown tremendously, and just working in the profession, especially ours, right? We've got our personal recovery, our personal wellness, with basically working in an arena that's all about other people's personal recovery and personal wellness. And so there's a blurry line there for sure. And you can lose yourself a little bit. And I feel like over the years, I have been resentful. I have been burnt out. I've gotten disenchanted, so to speak, which I feel like is a very naturally occurring thing for all of us. But it's about how do you work through that and how do you get back up. And soul care, we talked about this idea of there's your generic self-care that we always discuss, but maybe soul care is something a little deeper, a little more personal, a little more authentic that helps you move through those periods that are almost unavoidable.
Right. Well, I love that idea that this is going to happen, right? I think if you stick in a career, especially a helping profession type career, there will be times where you feel like it's unmanageable, or you don't have control over it, or that it, so I love that point that's really kind of part of the process, not necessarily a sign of a problem, but actually leaning into it as a part of the process so that you're coping with it in that context.
Exactly. It's kind of that it's analogous to that idea in the rooms where if I'm having a bad day, does that mean I'm spiritually unfit? Maybe it's just part of the process of me continuing to grow in recovery.
Oh yeah, I talk about that in rooms all the time. I'm like, this is wholehearted living. Having a negative spectrum of emotion sometimes or what we deem negative. I think, they're just a part of the emotional spectrum, and it's completely normal. And we will get out of balance. Sometimes we have to get out of balance to get back into balance, because it's a shift towards the evolution.
Yes, and to grow and become more effective. For those of us who continue to be social workers, who continue to be counselors, therapists, coaches, supervisors in the field, I don't think we're going to be as good as we can if we don't go through dark times.
Sure. Yeah, they're clarifying.
Exactly. It's kind of like the obstacle is the way sort of thing too.
Yeah. No, I love that concept, because I think it's invitational to, so many in life, so many people feel like if they have these emotions or thoughts or feelings, they push against them because they feel like it's a sign that there's something wrong with them, when part of the journey is to invite it, lean in. I love how you say, you always talk about being curious about it, leaning into it and saying, okay, what is this? And oh, wait, this is an actual normal part of life.
Yeah. So one of the metrics for me too has been something to be curious about. For example, when I first got into this, I really do love people, and I love with people and being around people. And that's one reason I was actually in the service industry for years, bartending,
Yeah.
managing restaurants. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons I thrive there is because I really like people. Well, the same thing carries over naturally into this field. And
Sure.
you get to a place where you wake up one day and it's like you hate people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, something's wrong here. And it's not, well, and one of my, especially as an addict,
Right.
one of my go-tos is run, well, bag this, I'm done. Like, I hate people.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I totally relate.
Right. And so fortunately, I've been able to move through, and it comes, I've had a lot of support from other people that really care about me. Like you're talking about those deep relationships with your inner circle, so to speak. I mean, if I haven't had good therapists, good life coaches, good friends, good, like my partner, Angela, I love her to death. She's basically my best friend too. If I hadn't been able to talk through stuff with her, I don't know if I would have made it through. And that would be a version of soul care for me. But the point is, I hated people for a period. And sometimes I'll still have that feeling come up, but it's run away from this because you hate people, you're bad at it now. Let's get curious about, why are you so upset? Are you aren't taking care of your soul like you should, or you need to? And let's just back up a little bit, grow, change, and then we come back even more effective and better at what we do.
Absolutely. Well, I think that too, one of the things we do is give away our power to other people. Like, I mean, it's just a natural part of the process. And like, so that for me sometimes is a sign that I'm giving something away and expecting from somebody to give me something that they can't give me. Like that does have to come from within.
Right. So that's a soul care thing. It comes from within, not without.
Yeah. Which is I think that's probably the one theme that I've had across all the people in this conversation. It's not an external thing. It's like when you get to the end of hustling the external, you have to go to the internal, and that's, and my friend Melody called it, spiritual equilibrium, or, homeostasis. That's what she called it, spiritual homeostasis, and like having that. And then last week, my friend Madra talked about centering, and so, it's that same concept.
Yeah. And I mentioned this to you in the stuff I wrote. I feel like, in different words, but same meaning, I lose myself in what everybody else wants me to be, what everybody else wants me to do. And it's not even just your agency. A lot of times there's this pressure from society. Mike, program director at Favor, he needs to call Julie back today.
Sure.
I mean, you can do that for a while, right?
Right.
There comes a time where it's like, no, I'm not calling Julie back because I need to go to the woods and be by myself.
Yep.
When I get back, I'll actually be better at calling Julie. So
yeah. Oh, the last 2 times I've taken time out for myself, like went on like almost like a sabbatical where I just unplugged, went somewhere to an Airbnb by myself. Like, it's interesting. Both times I've gotten these like, hey, we got a girl that just got out of treatment. She's in Colombia. I need you to call her now because she needs some help. And I have to be like, I'm sorry, I'm on sabbatical. Here's some other numbers. And it's so funny how people in the rooms especially are like, what? They don't understand that. And I'm like, I think that soul care for me is to this place where I recognize like, it's not my job to give away every last piece of me until there's nothing left. Like I have to be clear. And for me, and I know you relate to this a little bit too, is like, I've also had to rearrange what that looks like for me because I give away so much that I don't have anything left for the people that are closest to me. So if I'm coming home exhausted and I have nothing left for my husband and my kids, what good am I really doing for the world?
100% agree. And who we're closest to at the end of the day really is ourselves as well. What am I giving? If there's no joy in it, if there's no other life outside of being of service, then what's the point of being of service and having a life anyway?
Right. Well, and it's, it's really that whole, like they talk about faith without works is dead. And I go, well, works without faith is dead too. Like it's work without faith is ego. It's you're serving yourself. And we see a lot of people who serve themselves almost, to the end of the line. So yeah, I love that. And I love that concept of that. I think we all, like, no matter how much, like I was reading recently and somebody said, be clear that being a nonconformist is still a form of conformity. And I was like, ugh, what? But it's that piece of we are like, when you're doing that, you're still judging yourself about this outside picture of what you are versus like really developing that internal piece.
Yeah. And so, as you were talking through that, it reminded me of the responsibility pledge in the rooms, and that's a little tricky. I'm responsible whenever anybody reaches out anywhere for help. I'm the hand of always be there, that sort of thing. I can take that. My ego can definitely ingest that and become too responsible. And it's weird. I'm actually serving my ego. I'm not serving others.
That's right.
Right. And that's been part of the maturing process for me. Some of being good at, being a helper, being a coach, being a mentor, sponsor, whatever. It's actually about taking care of yourself and serving others, not serving others to take care of yourself.
Right. Yeah, that would be like trying to pull the glass in to make it full versus having it overflow because it is full.
Yes.
One's an extension of fullness within, and you talk about joy. I love that. That one's an extension of joy or service or fullness that overflows from within versus trying to fill it from the outside. Last week, our friend Madra, she talked about you can't fill a pint glass with a gallon jug too. It's like that concept of we have this finite, and we're also trying to overdo it for everyone. So sometimes we come with a gallon jug when really all somebody needs is a pint glass. And so we're also like responsible for seeing that's a form of feeding our ego because we're bringing too much to the table, not enough. Not the right amount.
God, it's so true. And it's funny because when I first got into recovery, there was this real sort of vindicating, validating experience about sponsoring someone, for example, because it meant it gave me purpose and self-worth too, right? I wasn't in touch with. But if it gets out of balance, all of a sudden, it's kind of like looking for love in all the wrong places.
Right.
For love and sponsoring a bunch of people.
Sure.
That's supposed to be one thing I do amidst the whole sort of like quilt of life experiences, not like the only thing I do because that brings value.
Right. And really my job with sponsees is to help them find a spiritual experience so they have a basis of, they have a basis of a relationship with their own higher power, and that's their source of sustenance, right? I'm not the source of sustenance.
That's exactly right. And that's part of the maturing soul care process is discerning the two. And for example, I remember when I first started working at Favor, my first year of in the field, I did a lot of sponsorships still. And for example, I was coming home from work and doing like book studies with sponsees nights a week, literally. Like I would have a sponsee over every night. And I started flaming out. Mm-hmm. So for me, I made a boundary of for a while, I'm not sponsoring people. That doesn't mean I wasn't involved in 12-step recovery, but I just didn't do that too. And that was the version of soul care for me. And a lot of people didn't understand that, Julie.
Sure.
Like, they thought that I was being selfish or self-centered. Well, actually, and here's a humble thing too. If I've got a role at Favor, being a coach, being a program manager, for example, well, maybe that's where a lot of my service and my time and energy goes. And that space to be a sponsor opens up for other people. Like that's not
the spirit of rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and understanding that, I was really fortunate in that my first sponsor just hammered in my head, you didn't get sober to hide in AA. Oops, I talked about AA at a public level, but well. You didn't get sober to hide in a meeting room, right? You didn't, that's not your role. Your role isn't to hide in the meeting room. Your role is to go out and live life and use that as a basis to keep you grounded, and so I was really, and I have a sponsor now who's very much like, she understands this downturn to less and more simplified stuff, and so she really amplifies that for me. And she's always like, we were reading a book together and it said, what is a well-tended spirit? So her thing with me is always, how are you tending to your spirit? That's what I care about right now, and I really appreciate that. It's not you need more meetings, you need to do this, you need to do that. Those things are just stacking on. I mean, for me, what I see a lot of people do is stack shame. It becomes a shame cascade because then they're not doing enough and then it's not good enough. And then something's got to be wrong with me because these things aren't making me feel better, when sometimes the answer is just to clear the plate and be.
I completely agree. That's sort of the dark side of the generic self-care recommendations. Go to another meeting, make more coffee, get into service. Well, what if I have been doing a lot of that. Maybe I actually need to get out of service to take care of my soul right now.
That's right. Oh man, and that is not a popular opinion.
But serving myself is service too, right?
Yeah.
And serving myself authentically, not serving my ego. For example, back to that sort of being of service because it fills up my cup. Well, I remember the first time I went to a meeting and there were like 3 sponsees in the room. I didn't know this at the time, but I was very proud of that, right?
Yeah.
Well, that no longer serves me to have that kind of experience. I mean, sponsorship is a much deeper thing for me. It's not about how many sponsees are at the meeting I'm attending.
That's right.
Egoic validation then. Like, it makes me feel good to be a sponsor.
Right. Well, I'm really clear with people about what I can and can't do, like, so I still sponsor folks, but, right now I don't take on anybody who's super new because what they need is somebody who can be there and answer the phone in real time and do that kind of stuff like that we, a lot of us needed when we came around. And I don't have the space for that in my life, and self-care is acknowledging that and being truthful about it. It's not feeling guilty about that. And I'm unapologetic about it because I have a career and I have my kids and I have all these things, and recovery for me isn't about what demonstrations I'm showing the rest of the world. It's about what kind of peace I have in my own head when I'm laying my head down at night. When I'm looking at my kids, do I have peace about that relationship? Am I living in conflict and discord with my husband? Like those are the things those are the signs that my care is off because they're signs of where I am, those things rightfully fall into place when I take care of myself properly. So JP has no problem with me going and staying in an Airbnb for 4 or 5 days by myself somewhere, because he knows what he gets back on the other end is somebody who's really kind of worked out some of the things I need to work out, and we connect and I'm in a better space, I
appreciate you continuing to bring up the family thing too, because that's been a big part of my journey as well. And my partner, Angela, and I, we live together, and she has a 15-year-old daughter, Mercy, and we have 2 cats and a dog, and that's something in my life that wasn't in my life 10 years ago when I first got clean, right?
Right.
People didn't understand when I was going to less meetings. Well, I've got a full-time plus job now and a family that I really care about, so I'm not going to 7 to 10 meetings a week anymore, right? And you may think that I need to, but that's that shame sort of castle, right? Shame me all you want into like trying to do what you want me to do, but the truth is, for me right now, 1 to 2 meetings a week is good, and I have a full-time family thing outside of my full-time job thing. Yeah, and that's what's good for my soul.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that there's a lot to be said for, finding what works for us and finding the balance. And for some people, it looks like this. And for us, and that was another point you made, is that it's really personal. Like it looks different for different people. Like, so what works for me for self and soul care doesn't necessarily look the same for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And for example, you talked about going to a B&B by yourself for a few days, right? And JP's learned to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And you've learned that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, same kind of thing for me. I took a trip. I've taken 2 trips in the last 2 years by myself. Mm-hmm. And one was I was completely alone in a cabin up in Blowing Rock. I'm sorry. What is that? Brevard. Mm-hmm. Week, and I went out to California for a week on a rafting trip with some buddies, and people give me grief about that too, but that's what works for me. Maybe what works for you is actually going to a rock concert and being around a ton of people. I don't know, but I think you got in touch with what it is. And it is. Yeah.
Well, and for me, it's quiet. Like I have this really, this. I mean, I have this really, like a lot of people go, okay, I have to think of a process. I go from A to B, and I have a friend who jokes and says, Julie goes from 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, like up to B. And that's how my brain is. So sometimes I need space, especially when something's weighing on me and I can't really put my finger on what's going on, or I haven't had space. Like I have to give myself space for my brain to just have, I call it wild space, for my brain to just go. If I don't have that, I have to carve that out and take it. And that's what, after being home with the kids for 14 weeks, trying to do crisis schooling, doing telehealth from home, literally not leaving the house for like sometimes 5 weeks at a time, Like I didn't have, my brain was literally hocked up. I needed to go and let it get unhocked. And so I laughed because I came home and everybody's like, "Are you all refreshed?" I was like, "That's not what it was about." My sponsor was like, "Is your soul stirred up?" I was like, "Yes, that's exactly what it was." And that's what I needed. I needed my soul to stir and reconnect with myself again.
Yeah, reconnect with yourself. That goes back to that thing about losing myself. I just feel like
Yeah.
that's what happens when I'm. That's what the curiosity is all about. Why am I so ratcheted up? Why am I so distraught? Well, I really do lose myself, and that's okay. I think we do lose ourselves in the work. We lose ourselves in service, and we lose ourselves in what other people want us to be. We
Mm-hmm.
back to that though.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then peeling away these external pieces. I said on a piece of content a couple weeks ago, like I was drowning, but I had nice hair and nice nails. Like, that's like for women, that's like the go get your manicure, go get your pedicure, get your hair done, go get a massage. And it's like, that's all fine and well, but how does that feed my soul, And so like I had to get to this place where I recognized like I could slap all the lipstick on it I wanted to. If I didn't deal with what was really going on, I was just going to continue to drown. So, and so I love, let's see, you talked about it's a part of the process. You got to adapt it. I love the ideas. Like you said, don't be afraid to honor your feelings.
Yeah. So this is kind of, I guess it's a little bit, what am I trying to say? Like it's one of those gooey sort of concepts, like honor your feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's really meaty too. That's very important. And if you are angry, if you are sad, if you are getting out of bed, I've had this happen where you're getting out of bed and you just don't want to do it. You know that, and you get down on yourself, and then that shame cycle starts. You got to get into that. And, for example, a couple years ago when I went up to the woods, I turned off my phone. I wasn't on the internet, and I was pretty much alone in my thoughts with just music, a little bit of movies here and there, but alone with my thoughts for about 48 hours. And then you start to really feel it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In a way that it's hard to feel it like that with all the distractions that we have day to day.
Yeah.
And I even got into a space where I cried for a while because I was so just spread thin. And it's weird though, if you can't honor those feelings and get into that space of sadness, of grief, of frustration with yourself, everything else, you can move through it and you come out on the other side more in touch with who you are again and just better able to get back to doing what we do.
Yeah. My friend Melody said you have to walk through the ring of fire of discomfort with your own thoughts and feelings so that you can get to the peace on the other side. I really love that concept because it's like literally you can see the other side, what the other side looks like, but you just got to walk through, just really quick, get through that discomfort, which I think is lends itself to a human process. We talk about it as though it's this like unique thing to people who are in recovery or who have addiction or issues with substance use. But the truth is that in general, most of us will cause ourselves a lifetime of misery to avoid one moment of pain. Like we want the instant gratification of not feeling uncomfortable right now, but we literally prolong the inevitable. And so being honest with ourselves really is a direct path.
Right. And running from our feelings isn't monopolized by us with addiction issues, right? That's a human experience. I mean, life is suffering and we don't like feeling it. And so we run.
Yeah.
But there's no question about it. In order to grow spiritually or to get in touch with soul care, we've got to get into those feelings. And we've got to
Yeah, I mean, I think about it even like when you talk about like churches and, Christian circles and stuff, everybody wants the experience of throwing their hands up and, having the catharsis of the joy that comes with that. But they can't, there's like, we miss the part where there's like this quiet suffering that happens. And it's suffering to our own thoughts and feelings. Like it's suffering to, how peeling back those things and really being honest with ourselves. Like that is a process of suffering. And when I say that, I don't mean, but it's a process of grieving in losing ourselves.
Yeah, it's also a process of shaping our goals and like molding our strength and our peace and our serenity, right? I love the Christian reference. I mean, I think going into your closet and praying, that's what that means,
Yeah.
It's not praying in public during a rejoicing, like church service.
Yeah.
It's like be alone with that misery, or going into the desert. The desert for 40 days to me means suffer with yourself and then move through.
Yeah. Well, and there's a part of the, Richard Rohr talks often about how, Jesus went into the wilderness and found the beast of his own mind. He had to contend with the beast of his own mind, and then, so that's an interesting thing. And that reminds me, you're talking about going into your closet and praying. My cousin, a couple of years ago, felt really called. She was in this high-powered career. She was traveling all the time, and she would come home and see her daughter, and she just felt like she wasn't serving her daughter well. And her husband was a fire captain, so he's gone for 48 or 72 hours at a time. And her daughter was just getting shifted around a lot. That's just not the life. And they had this hunting property in the middle of Texas, like dead in the center of like the triad between, Houston and Dallas and Austin, in the middle of ranching country. They had a hunting property and they built a little house there, and they just dropped everything and moved. And she just felt like that's what God called her to do. And she said she wrote in huge letters on her wall in her closet, "Be still and know." And she said, I would literally go sit in that and sit in the suffering of like peeling apart everything that I wanted to do with my life, and knowing that's not what God was calling me to do. Like God was calling me to honor my family, to take care of my child, to feed into her, right? To she's like, but I also had to give up a, 6-figure career and all these bonuses and these things that made me feel good about myself, and like really just be still in that. She said she would just sit, like she spent like 3 months sitting in her closet crying, looking at that every morning, like going, God, I'm honoring this, but like this hurts, There's some power in that.
But letting go and getting in touch with our true selves does hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But, nothing worthwhile is pain-free.
That's true.
I don't know, how did you put it earlier? We'll avoid a moment of like pain to experience a lifetime of misery or something?
No, we'll cause ourselves a lifetime of misery to avoid one moment of pain.
Right. So it really is more painful in the long run to run.
That's right. Oh, absolutely. No doubt. I love how I really wanted to talk about this really quick, and then we can wrap up because we're about 30 minutes in, but it said, you said crying is a coping mechanism. Now I know you mentioned that you cried and allowed yourself to do that. And then you said it's a cathartic practice. And I think that's a really powerful statement.
Right. Especially, this taps into some of that Brene stuff and the whole cultural conditioning around, men don't cry, or even women, you're supposed to be tough, right? Go to work, have a career, and have dinner on the table, loving your kids unconditionally. Well,
right.
Look, I think crying is an emotional expression that's very natural, and a lot of times it does help us process feelings. And I feel in that regard, it is a healthy coping mechanism. It's not a sign of weakness, and it is a cathartic process. And I think, look, I've worked with a lot of men over the years too, that are just as broken as many of the women I've worked with. And if they do get vulnerable and they get honest, core issues that come from family of origin stuff or past post-traumatic stress that's occurred in their lives, when they can get vulnerable and be with that pain, I mean, a lot of them cry. I've had many men cry in my office, and I think it's very useful.
Me too. Absolutely. And interestingly, I find that when men get to that point, and I was thinking about this, I had somebody last week and he just wept openly. And he said, I don't know why this is coming, but he just let it come. And the women are like grabbing the tissues immediately, trying to so the irony of it is men have this long held belief that like when you get them in a vulnerable space, my experience has been sometimes they're willing to just let it go. And women are still in that place where they're trying to keep it all, I'm making some real broad generalizations here, but based on my experience, you're right. I mean, I do see a lot of men come in and sit down and they do cry and they do allow that process to happen, and it is cathartic for them, Yeah,
and I would just encourage anybody, if you ever do get to that place, to just allow yourself to experience it. It's hard though, because all of that conditioning does work against it. It's like,
yeah, I know. I
had myself up by the bootstrap.
But you can see it. It's almost like immediately the shoulders go back, the tissues come out. They're trying,
and we're so uncomfortable being with somebody who does that too, right? That is the tissue handing thing. Well, the answers come from within. Why don't you just let them move through that? Like, chill for a minute.
Oh yeah, I don't hand people tissues. Like, it's so funny because if they ask finally, I'll say there's some tissues right there, and I will tell them that, this is a safe space to cry. So I want you to, know that there was lots of tears been shed on that couch, and, and it's okay, and sometimes just sitting quietly with people when they do it, a lot of times I just ask reflective questions like, you want to talk to me about what's coming up for you right now, and I invite them to kind of lean into it and walk through it in a safe way. And I had to teach myself how to cry. I don't know if you had this experience, but when I got into recovery, I had to literally had to teach myself how to cry. And when the tears finally came, have you ever heard that story?
I haven't heard your story about teaching yourself how to cry. No.
I literally, it would start to come up and then it would just like stop, and something like literally I would just go numb. And it was like literally I would just try to like encourage it to come, and it would start to come up and it kept welling up in my chest. Well, one time I was at, it was in Eckerd's back then. I was at Eckerd's and I went in to buy shampoo, and this is so embarrassing. Cherish the Love by Kool and the Gang came on the Muzak, and I don't know, that was the time my tears, I was like snot slinging crying on the shampoo aisle in Eckerd's. I'm trying to check out, and the guy's like, are you okay? I was like, I'm just learning how to cry again, but when they came, and now
the ugly cry.
The ugly cry in the middle, like snot bubble in the hole. It was beautiful. Anyway, so yeah, I think that, I forget sometimes how uncomfortable it was for me, and so honoring that safe space is sometimes just allowing people the space to also push against it a little bit too.
Well, that safe space is so important too. Maybe these will be sort of my closing thoughts.
Sure.
You got to find whatever it is that gives you that safe space, creates it for you, because that's where it almost does naturally occur. For example, I'm currently in therapy. I go twice a month, and that's been on and off for me.
Yeah, I have it at 12 o'clock today.
And I personally benefit from it. And I don't currently have a sponsor. I miss having a sponsor in certain respects, but I also love what a therapist does for me. That's just where I'm at in my life. And I trust her, and there are moments where I'm with her and I'll cry. And it wasn't sort of like manipulated or anything. It just came because I'm in a safe space there.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And it's funny, the learning to cry thing. I've never thought about it like that, but there's still moments where I feel like I could cry more, but it's almost like an involuntary reaction to shut it down. Like I'm actually learning. So it's still hard for me, even around her, that I feel safe with, to let it all out. And if you can, though, it's really cool.
Yeah, it really is. I love that. There's a lot of value. And I think it's just the ending point with that is also just in, like be invitational with whatever we're experiencing.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, because it's actually anger, for example. Like that's a naturally occurring emotion for me too, that I've gotten more in touch with in recovery, because when I was drinking and drugging, and when I was I don't know, I guess just a naive kid who'd run from his feelings, I didn't express my anger as much. And I think there's a healthy way to express anger too that isn't like hurting people or hurting yourself.
No, yeah, absolutely.
And learning how to do that's cool. Like play them a pillow, like be pissed off, like let your face get right. Yeah.
When I worked at when I did adolescent crisis unit at a local mental health hospital, like they laughed at me, but I would take kids, like I could always tell when we were trying to wind everybody down and get them to bed who was really wound up, and I would do some processing out with them. And they let me, I would take them, if somebody was really just struggling with just this anger, I would take them to the gym at like 11 o'clock at night and just let them slam a basketball against the wall over and over and over again, because it's got to come out, it's got to come out. And it, you can't expect it's just when we kill our soul when we internalize that stuff.
Well, that's like the ultimate takeaway. Find the healthy, safe way, authentic way for you to get that out, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Yeah. Man, I laugh because I was like 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, we're almost 40 minutes in, so we'll wrap it. But I always appreciate our conversations, and you and I could certainly go, so long with
Yeah, I could go the rest of the afternoon on this stuff for sure.
I know. So I appreciate your
Books
time.
with each other.
Right. No, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your willingness to show up and carve out space. I know y'all got a lot of
I
projects.
appreciate the invitation, and edit whatever you need to.
No, actually, we go straight through. We just from when I introduce myself, we don't edit the actual content.
Right.
We go from start to finish. So yeah, so it'll all be included. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening. You can catch us on all forms of social media at Cole Wellness. And this podcast plays on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. So thank you for listening today, and we'll catch up with you next week.